This is Always Outnumbered, Always Outgunned, chapter The Wanderer, section 3. Socrates walked on, freezing and burning and feeling a freedom that he only ever dreamt about when he was a child on his bitter aunt's lap. The sun arched high above, almost washing out the blue in the sky, and then began to descend. To descend means to go down. Socrates saw seashells and syringes half buried in the surf. A syringe is what you use to inject yourself with medicine. He saw a group of gulls, birds, rending the corpse of a brown dog, tearing up the body of a brown dog. He saw the patterns of high tide rippled in the dry sand. High tide is when the water of the water level of the ocean goes up or down, and it changes a couple times a day. High tide is when the water level is at its highest, and when it comes up on the sand, it'll bring seaweed and pieces of wood and other stuff and leave it at certain points of the sand. So high tide, where the water is at its highest, is marked in the dry sand with stuff, and then and then when the tide goes out, there's a line of stuff marking how high the water got. Here and there was salted foam sketched into sandy depressions. Everything was harsh and beautiful, the way he'd always known life to be. Socrates felt every breath and wondered if he could leave the life he'd made back down around Charles and his grinning fool friends. If he got tired, he sat down. There was fruit and sandwiches enough in his pockets. He knew that he should turn around, but he had the notion that there might be something waiting for him up ahead, something that he could take home, something that would keep him from forgetting what he had seen and felt. He was looking for a souvenir. He passed many people on the way north, but never spoke. Sometimes he'd nod and smile. Now and then his greeting was returned. Toward the later afternoon, he saw a couple walking his way from far up the shore. A man in layers of gray and a woman dressed in bright clothes. He was large and she was slight, with a youthful gait or walk. She swung one hand back and forth while the other arm was wrapped around her lover's waist. They were certainly lovers, Socrates could tell that. He was older, and she was the kind of child that drove older men crazy. There was a double passion in them. His gait was heavy, deliberate, hers so light-hearted that she was almost in flight there next to him. To be in flight means to be flying. Socrates hoped that they would keep walking in his direction. He wanted to see their faces and smile at them. From afar, Socrates thought the man might have been black, or Mexican, or maybe he was just a very tan white man. The girl had to be white, though. Her skin almost shone in the afternoon sun. It didn't matter. Nothing did in the breath-like wind of the blue ocean, the screaming and chiming and hissing of some language that was older than men were, older than life itself. Socrates heard the words of that blue god in the base of his brain. It made him feel crazy and struck him dumb. Slowly the couple came toward him. He trudged on. To trudge is to walk tiredly. When they were less than 100 feet distant, Socrates was sure the man was black, but he was no longer positive about the girl. Her skin was olive closer up. The girl, or woman, white or black, whatever she was, waved at Socrates, and his heart jumped. He felt like a child again, about to meet new friends at the playground. Sandbox. "Hey, man," said the large black man, who was all dressed in gray. "What's happening?" He took Socrates' hand in a powerful grip. It was rare that Socrates encountered a man as strong as he was. To encounter it means to meet. He might have been aging. He might have lost his wind. But Socrates could still lift a 40-gallon trash can, brimming with water, and walk at a full city block. "Hey," the young woman said, with one quick breath. Her skin was amber, and her long hair was everything from blonde to brown, from straight to curly. Her eyes might have been green, but it was her face that gave Socrates pause. The features were sparse on a long, horse-like skull. The extended bone of her nose came down, broadening a little toward generous lips. Her cheeks were high, but the sloping curve of her forehead diminished their effect. She was a beautiful woman-child, not more than 17, and strange to look at, almost not human. "We were watching you," the girl said. "Gordo thought that you were a soldier like him, but I said no. I said that you weren't ever in the army. You walk like nobody ever taught you how to march." Socrates smiled and nodded. "Well?" the man asked. "Well, what? Were you in the army?" "Not hardly," Socrates said. The girl socked Gordo, he punched him, in the upper arm and shouted, "Ha! I win!" "You want a drink?" Gordo asked Socrates. He slung a large gray backpack from his shoulders and sank to his knees in the sand. "This is Dahlia." Dahlia stuck out her hand, and when Socrates took it, she pulled so that he would sit down with them. "What's your name?" she asked. "Socrates." "Wow, far out," she mouthed. Maybe she was whispering, but Socrates couldn't hear her over the sound of the waves. Gordo pulled a quart bottle of cheap red wine from the backpack. "We've got weed, too." Weed is marijuana. "You want some smoke?" he asked. "Wine would be fine." Gordo had a boy's face with hair that had gone more than half gray, salt and pepper through his mustache and eyebrows. He unscrewed the bottle top and took a deep swig or drink of the red wine. Socrates took the next drink. Dahlia held the bottle to her open mouth and poured the wine in, spilling some down her multicolored patchwork vest. She laughed and handed the bottle back to her man. Gordo twisted the bottle into the sand. "What brings you out here?" Gordo asked Socrates. "Nothing that I could tell," Socrates answered. "Just out for a walk. I do that about every 20 years or so." Gordo smiled. "You want something to eat? We have chili and tortilla chips." "And soda," Dahlia added. "Sure," Socrates said. He was thinking that he should go home, back to Watts. He was thinking that he was too far out. A voice in his head actually said, "Go home now, Socrates." But the wind and the water made the voice small and insignificant. Dahlia pulled up her leather skirt and folded her bare legs in the sand. "There's a bunch of driftwood a mile or so back there, up toward the canyon," Gordo said. "We could go on up there. Nobody'll see a fire." Socrates was staring at those long brown legs. When Dahlia looked into his eyes, her grin turned into a silent laugh. Section 5. They went back up the beach about a mile, then under Pacific Coast Highway through a concrete drainage ditch. The steep canyon they entered was narrow and nameless. It went about 1,000 yards into the Santa Monica Mountains, and then came to a halt. Throughout the dry stream bed were tangled piles of driftwood, brought in on countless high tides. "You come out here much?" Dahlia asked Socrates as they picked their way through the creek bed. "I've never been up here before." "It's funny because it's kind of wild, and then it's like civilized, too." She pointed up toward the edges of the steep canyon walls. At first, all Socrates saw was the sky. The blue was darkening toward night. Then he saw the lights, electric lights from houses that perched at the top of the canyon, houses that seemed to be teetering, almost falling off, on the verge of tumbling down the cliffs. Some of them had already fallen prey to mudslides and erosion. A mudslide is when it rains a lot and the dirt gets so wet that it no longer stays where it belongs and it slides down the cliff. Now, if you build your house too close to the edge and there's a mudslide, your house goes down with it. One such disaster had brought a full wall of salmon-pink cinder blocks crashing down to the creek bottom. "If I could have me a house," Gordo said, looking up at the canyon walls, "that's where I'd have mine." "Why's that?" Socrates asked. "Because the ground up there is just wearing away," right out from under them. Gordo grinned in the fading sunlight. But, Socrates said, thinking again that he should be on his way, but that doesn't make sense. The ground under you and me, and even Dahlia there, it's wearing out. Ground is hungry to be your grave, man. Everybody's walking around and talking like the ground is solid under them. Gordo snapped his fingers loudly. You could be gone just like that, just like one of those houses up there. Dahlia moved close to Gordo's side. She picked a dry leaf from his hair. There isn't any use in hurrying the process, Socrates said, which means, why would you want to die sooner? But, Gordo said, at least up there you know for a fact that it's going to happen. At least up there you know you have to live. Gordo took 3 of the blocks and laid them flat, their long sides facing in toward each other in a kind of ritualistic circle. Dahlia piled as much driftwood as she could between the cinder bricks. From his pack, Gordo pulled out a beaten-up tin pot that held 3 cans of Hormel chili. He also took out a large bag of tortilla chips and an 8-pack of cherry-flavored Coca-Cola in cans. It's my birthday, Gordo said. This is my party. You always come out here for your party? Socrates asked. Gordo looked him straight in the eye, his aging boy's face grim with concentration. No, he said at last. Never been here for my birthday before, but I always go someplace special, and this here is the most special one. Why's that? Gordo reached into his bag and came out with a long, slender candle. It was tapered and deep red. Gordo held the candle up and smiled. My birthday candle, he said. Dahlia was busy opening the cans of chili with a pocket can opener that was no larger than a quarter. She dumped the fat, clotted, dark brown contents of each can into the pot. Gordo brought the quart of wine to his lips and finished it in one long drink or draught. Then he took the candle and screwed it into the bottle's neck. Before everyone's born, somebody dies, Gordo intoned. For every birthday we celebrate the dead. Before every birthday we celebrate the dead, I think he's saying. He lit the candle as solemnly, as seriously as a priest. He was on his knees in front of the flame, his arms hanging helplessly at his sides. Dahlia wedged the pot in between the cinder blocks and set the wood on fire with a cigarette lighter. The flames glared brightly, and at the same time the sun sank behind the drainage embankment. That means the sun went down behind the cliff. It was as if she had called up night with a gesture. Dahlia, lit by the fire, seemed to be surrounded by darkness, while the rest of the canyon was in the early onset of twilight. Twilight is the time between full light and full dark. Socrates felt the chill of evening. He sat down to put on his socks and shoes. Where are you from, girl? He asked to break the spell of Gordo's silent reverie. A reverie is like a period of time that you're thinking. Ohio. What about your parents? She shrugged and smiled, pulled her skirt way up on her thighs, and went down on her knees. I killed 26 people, Gordo said. It might have been the only thing that could have dragged Socrates' eyes away from her legs. How many? 26. The last one was 26 years ago. Skinny little slant-eyed guy, wasn't any bigger than 130 pounds. Here I played football at Los Angeles High School, and he nearly killed me. Nearly did. Nearly did. Gordo gazed off toward the fire. Vietnam? This here is the last candle, Gordo said. The last one. He took a twig from the ground and lit it on the flaming wick of his blood-colored candle. The crooked stick winked and flickered on the evening breeze, like a butterfly of flame. I always come out with a girl and drink and celebrate one of the men I done in. To have done in someone is to kill them. I light the candles one by one and eat and drink a toast. What do you want me for? Socrates asked. We just saw you, man. That's all. You know, it's kind of like you pick up what you find on the beach. That's life on the beach. Uh-huh, Socrates said. Do you want some? Dahlia asked. She piled a tin plate with tortilla chips and used an empty can to scoop chili over it. Socrates took the plate along with a tiny white plastic fork. Thank you. She made another plate for Gordo, who took it gravely or seriously, with both hands. Are you eating? Socrates asked the girl. I don't eat meat, she said, and then produced an orange from the inside of her cloak. She bit into the peel, spat out the rind is the orange part around the orange, and then began to squeeze and suck at the hole she'd made. Do you have a car? Gordo asked. Socrates felt prickles across his bald scalp. That means he's getting afraid. Are you sure you haven't killed anybody in 26 years, he asked. And Gordo's white smile flashed on his dusky face, dark as dusky. He let out a low chortle or laugh. Socrates felt his weight against the soft giving ground. If he rose up quickly, his feet would sink in the sand. The image of a painting that he'd seen in the prison library came into his mind. It was in a book called The History of European Art. He didn't remember the painter's name. It was a dark scene. Two men, sunk in the ground up to their knees, were hitting each other with cudgels or sticks. They were bloody and tired, but they were stuck in the ground and had to keep on fighting forever. They were big men, too, bigger than the mountains that lay behind them. That's it, brother, Gordo said. 1969, November 3rd. It wasn't far out from the camp. He jumped at me with a stick knife, but I hurt him. Gordo's eyes glistened in the firelight. Evening had come. Where are you coming from, brother? Gordo asked. Prison, mostly. What were you in for? Murder. You killed a man? Daly asked. Socrates didn't answer her. How long were you in prison? Gordo asked. 27 years. For killing one man? Gordo was really surprised. It was a man and a woman. I raped her too, Socrates said, wondering at the spell of the ocean. And then there was the 3 convicts I killed, but nobody ever knew it. At least nobody could ever prove it. And then there was all the men I brutalized and molested, robbed and threatened. I either committed a crime or had a crime done to me every day I was in jail. Once you go to prison, you belong there. Did you kill anybody hand to hand? Gordo asked. His body was tense, his head still like a predator's. A predator is an animal that kills other animals. I did it all with my bare hands. All of them. I ain't never used any weapon. I had them, but I never used one. Section 6. Gordo nodded and waxed a bit. I went from high school to heroin by way of Vietnam, Gordo said. Dahlia had her head in his lap. She was looking up into Socrates' eyes. Everything was stronger there. The drugs, the rain, the sun, and the enemy. You could put him in the ground, but he'd just pop up again. Pop right back up at you. After a while, all you felt was tired. Tired. What he means by this popping right back up is that there were so many of the enemy that if you killed someone, there was another enemy to take his place. The exhaustion of war descended or fell on Gordo. His shoulders slumped, and the plate tilted in his lap. He couldn't speak or even lift his spoon. The man seemed so tired that Socrates wondered how long he would be able to draw breath, how long he would stay alive. Then Dahlia talked about orphanages and shopping malls and how she was nobody and how much she liked that because there wasn't anybody she wanted to be. And these lines say from right about here down to here, Dahlia offers to have sex with Socrates, and he says no. Socrates says, I'm going to go. Oh. Dahlia sounded honestly disappointed. Stay. We don't have to do anything. Come on. Socrates waved at Gordo and said, see ya. The veteran, the former military man, waved back. See ya. On her tiptoes, Dahlia gave Socrates a girl's kiss on the lips. It was wet and soft and tasted of ocean salts and orange peel. Section 7. Socrates staggered back down the way he'd come, down near the water where the sand was firm and wet. The waves followed him, crashing against the shore and breaking into foam that was almost phosphorescent in the moon's stark light. Phosphorescent means that it lights up in the dark. It was, Socrates felt, the ocean's laughter. And it was funny. He thought of Dahlia writhing in the sand with Gordo, her hemp-like hair sporting small flames from the cook fire. He thought of Charles Rinnet, grown old before his time, pushing a stolen grocery cart down Hooper and Central in Florence. He walked a long way and then stopped. His legs felt as if someone had laid a live wire against them. A live wire is an electrical wire with current coming out of it. It was all he could do not to fall down. He walked or strode up to where the underbrush and the cliffs met the sand. There he found 2 large cardboard boxes, abandoned. He fit the boxes together behind a thorny bush. Once inside, he tried to keep the thought of coffins out of his mind. The wind played against the paper walls all night. The hollow sound of rushing air and the slither of gathering sands. The wind was so strong the boxes would have blown away, save for Socrates' weight. The wind pressed the side of the box against him. He leaned into the pressure, dreaming of his Aunt Delandra's lap. In the morning, he saw half-erased paw prints in the sand around his shelter. It made him happy to think of some It made him happy to think of some dog guarding his frail home. The sun glared down so strong that the sea seemed tame. When he raised his arms, bellowing as he stretched, hundreds of seagulls cried and broke into flight. That means they took off flying. He could see where they'd been resting in a flooded clearing just past his thorny corner. He wondered about Dahlia and Gordo, but did not return to their grotto or their little ravine. Instead, he wandered back toward the blue buses and home. Somewhere along the way, Charles Rinnet's voice came to him. "You think that means something," the phantom or ghost sneered. "That talk is over," Socrates whispered as he imagined Charles Rinnet blowing away on a breeze.